Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam Tapasaradhya purusham Tasyaiva nugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhya yatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam. Would anyone like to chant? Tasyaivanugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam. Up. Yadichasi kusamam Tapasaradhya purusham Tasyaivanugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam. Goes up, not down. Tapasaradhya purusham Tasyaivanugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam. Ladies. Tapasaradhya purusham Tasyaivanugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam. Tapasaradhya purusham Tasyaivanugrahena me Garbhe tvam sadhyayatmanam Yadichasi nripasanam. Word meanings. I don't see well. You want to do it? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Tapasa, by austerities. Aradhya, having satisfied. Purusham, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasyam, by His. Eva, only. Anugrahena, by the mercy of. Me, my. Garbhe, in the womb. Tvam, you. Sadhya, place. Atmanam, yourself. Yadi, if. Ichasi, you desire. Nripa asanam, on the throne of the king. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and then, when you are favored by him, because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. There's a very short purport. Suruchi was so envious of Dhruva Maharaj that she indirectly asked him to change his body. According to her, first of all, he had to die then take his next body in her womb, and only then will it be possible for Dhruva Maharaj to ascend the throne of his father. End of purport.
Om Gyanatirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, what shall we do? The two of us had a discussion as to how to do this. We felt that instead of each of us doing a separate little talk, we felt might be well, if anything goes wrong, I should take the blame because I initiated the thing. But you agreed, so you also might be at fault.
I'm on the boat.
Yes. So we thought might be interesting that each one of us reads the text and the purport and thinks about it and compiles a few questions. So in this way, I will interview him and he will interview me. And in this way, we should have sort of a discussion. And I did not want to. We showed each other the questions we composed, and I did not want to look at these questions because I really wanted to be spontaneous. But I gave in.
Sorry.
I did have a look at your questions 10 minutes ago. And I'm glad I have. He asked tough questions. All right. Well, just in the way of introduction, again, wherever you open this book, it's really interesting. This story, for anyone who's trying to become a devotee, for anyone who identified devotional service as a goal of life, as anything worth achieving, this story is a very interesting one. There's really a lot of interesting questions that pop up here. In the beginning of this story, like what we're reading right now here, I have a hard time telling who's more wrong, Suruchi or Dhruva. What did I just say? But in the mistake of Suruchi is quite obvious. But Dhruva also made a very similar mistake. As I think about it, Dhruva seems to be suffering from a similar disease. The saving grace there might be that he's a child and she's a grown-up woman. But if we were to erase these differences, then we would see that she was wrong. She was very wrong. But then the way Dhruva reacted was also not all that great. And then at the end, it turned out to be really, really good, which is a very interesting thing. Before I saw his questions, I prepared a bit of an introduction, but then I thought I'll skip it because I thought your questions were pretty good. And why not just jump straight to these questions? So should I begin first, or you'll begin first, the questioning?
You may. We can go back and forth, no?
Okay, I see.
If that's okay,
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, this is a note I wrote. Dhruva chased success. And his journey is an interesting one. He thought that the success was to establish his position in the family and in the court of his father king. This is one of the things Dhruva wanted to achieve, besides being just a hurt little boy. For Suruchi, success was to remain the primary queen and that her offspring inherits the throne. We see that Dhruva ultimately changed this concept of what means to be successful. Now I'm jumping ahead, but anyways, this is the last day of the festival. But we all know, I assume we all are more or less familiar with this story. And Dhruva ultimately had a change of mind. And so from this I have a few questions here. What is success? And okay, let's put it like this. What is success? Yeah, and I don't know if you can notice that this question could be answered in two ways. Like you could define success, like look it up in the dictionary, which would be sort of identifying the concept of success as a principle. But you could also understand this question as asking for an example of a success. So what is success? And then how our concept of success forms our values system. You know what values system is? Values, we all have values and we live by, we all consider some things valuable. And what we consider to be successful tends to shape our values system. But then on the other hand, or does the value system form our concept of what is success?
Yeah, very interesting question. In a sense also we have the beginning of the new year, right? So we're looking back at the last year, so was it a successful year? And what are my goals, my aims for the upcoming year, 2024? So it's interesting to look at this. What actually does success mean for me personally? And also the question of how is this, is the success or the concept of success shaping our values or the other way around? And I think I understand it's a very dynamic relationship, which means each influences the other.
What comes first, chicken or the egg?
Yeah, chicken or the egg, that's the question. Like when success shaping our values in the sense of like cultural influence, you know, like we grow up in a certain culture, and in the culture certain things are considered to be success. Like, and especially in the modern Western world, you know, obviously wealth, you know, fame, you know, these things are understood to be success. And if we grew up in such a culture, then we certainly start to chase after these things because everyone tells us that this is what it means to be successful. It's interesting. There is a famous movie, 7 Years in Tibet. Most probably some of you have seen that, which is about Heinrich Harrer, a famous Austrian mountain climber who happens to be in Tibet, and then he met a pretty young girl. So he wants to impress that girl, the Tibetan girl, you know, like, so he starts to show off. That time they didn't have Facebook or something, but he brought newspaper articles which show how he climbed this mountain and that mountain, and he's the biggest mountain climber of the time, you know, like, so he shows off. And she looks at him and says, like, you know, that's another difference between your civilization and our civilization here, because in your civilization you admire the man who pushes his way to the top on any walks of life, you know, like someone who blows up his ego and becomes very successful. That person is admired in your civilization.
Ubermensch.
But while and then she says, like, in our civilization, like Tibetan, you know, civilization, we admire the man who abandons the ego. The one who is very humble and meek, who gives up the ego. We admire that man. So that's the difference between your civilization and our civilization. So that's just an example of how the environment we grow up certainly shapes our concept of success. And of course also the external validation, like if our parents always clap if we do something good. Like some parents want, my son should be the tennis profi, Roger Federer, from Switzerland. They play well tennis. So then they, so then of course the child realizes, okay, if I play tennis well, then I get this, appreciation. So it becomes our value. Like I remember my mother, when I came back from school, every time I showed the mark sheet, like the marks from school, she didn't pay so much attention to the marks itself, but there is always a comment by the teacher about the behavior, well behavior, respectful, and so on.
That's why it became so nice.
Well, it was
now we know it.
Christian background, so the value that I received was like, the external success is not so important, but you have to be a nice boy, like that's important. Like the character that you develop, that's important. So in this way we get shaped. Of course, then also on the other side,
can I
please.
jump in?
Please.
I mean, I was as you were speaking of the culture, I thought how every educational system is based on, whether you notice it or not, but it's based on reward and punishment. Like if you do something good, you're rewarded, and if you do something bad, you're punished. And even at school, like what's the exam? You take an exam, and at the end of the exam, if you did well, according to the estimate of the institution, you get a good grade. And societies do the same. So if you're a devotee, for example, if you behave a certain way, society rewards you. Like if you did a lot of books, you got all the applause and all that. Yeah. Or if you're humble, then the society, like Vaishnava society, will reward you, and you accept that as a goal. That becomes your value system, and you don't even notice it. But also, if you're being educated by some other system of values, you develop a different cultural paradigm, and you develop different goals in life.
And it can be all unconscious. It's just
you don't even notice it. Yeah, it's interesting how that ego works.
The other point is that, of course, values shaping also the concept of our success. And especially when we come to Krishna consciousness and we learn, I'm not this body, I'm an eternal spiritual soul, I'm eternal servant of Krishna. So the more I absorb this concept and understand this, the more my values also change. So that's the other way around. And of course, that's why Srila Prabhupada so much emphasized on this point. We are not these bodies. And sometimes we think, oh, well, we have heard it many times. But in some way, it's a very crucial point. At that point, I really understand that I'm a servant of Krishna. Then the way I think, the way I feel, the way I act will be differently. And this is basically what really needs to... That's the whole idea of spiritual life, is a transformation of the heart from that understanding of I'm the center of the universe, everything is meant for my enjoyment, and I'm the controller, to the point where I see Krishna is in the center and I'm his servant. And the more I have this really deep realization, I'm a servant, then my values certainly will change completely.
I had crisis first time I saw devotees offering obeisances. It's like, what? This is disgusting. You're bowing down to someone? Horrible. Yeah. But it's interesting, like that one cultural element, bowing down, that's an expression of a cultural value. It is a cultural value that is an expression of a spiritual value, metaphysical value, and that is humility. I'm a soul, I'm a servant of a servant of a servant, and you express that by actually bowing down. Or maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but I also, for 4 years, my full-time service was to distribute books, and And whenever we had these award-giving ceremonies, I had a really hard time. My ego would be all over the place. It was a very difficult time, just because of the ego, you know. Anyhow, but did you want to say anything else on that?
I think I should also take off the garland.
Okay. And examples of a good success and examples of a bad success.
Maybe we start with the bad success.
All right.
I mean, what comes to my mind is like, there's many examples of people they win in lottery, and then they ruin their lives. So in some way they became successful, got $1 million or something, but then they're not able to handle it. The relationships broke because everyone comes and wants money.
Someone once in America did a whole documentary. What happened to the people who won the lottery?
It's miserable.
Yeah, hardly anyone or remained alive or remained wealthy or in good health. Yeah, they all had that.
Yeah. And of course, there's a nice statement I found. Ivan Illich or something. He was a philosopher from Austria. He said, in a consumer society there are inevitably two kinds of slaves, the prisoners of addiction and the prisoners of envy. Because if you always run for consume or enjoyment, then naturally there will be a lot of, basically become a prisoner of this striving for material happiness. And of course Srila Prabhupada speaks about the fever of material existence in the famous Janmaishvara Shruta Shribir, Queen Kunti's prayers, where she describes that actually only a Akinchana Gocharam, one who is materially exhausted, can actually approach the Lord with sincere feelings. Because, of course, if someone has a good karma, piety in his past life, usually he becomes, good birth, he will have a lot of money, wealth, he will be intelligent, and he will be beautiful. So these are signs of good karma. But then Prabhupada explains that they can become obstacles if we become intoxicated by them. And Prabhupada speaks of a fever, the fever of material opulence. And Prabhupada explains the goal of life is to actually decrease this fever, not to increase it.
Yeah.
And that could be an example of bad success in a sense. You become materially very successful, but then you're unable to actually understand deeper spiritual subject matters because of that.
Could you become spiritually, materially successful? Yeah, like you gain a position within an institution.
Yeah, right. In a
like you created an identity,
Right, in devotional terms, you're most... Like you've become a very great book distributor, and that's a great success. But if you become proud because of that, then that's actually, you lost.
Yeah.
Or you become a great manager, and then you start to offend people. You commit Vaishnava aparat. So what is the use of your position?
That's why you gave up.
That's why I gave up, and now... Anyway.
Here, you, Damodar. You take the risk.
Yeah, risky business. And of course, example of good success, there is this nice shloka in the Bhagavatam, first canto, 5th chapter, where Narada Muni says that basically if someone gives up material occupation and engages in devotional service, even if he falls down, what is the loss? But on the other hand, if someone becomes very successful materially, but is not cultivating spiritual life, he doesn't gain anything. And of course that explains that, devotional service has an eternal nature, eternal benefit, whereas material success basically has no value at all. And I think that was also Prabhupada's motto by taking risk and engaging devotees in giving sannyas to young devotees, because he knew, like from the spiritual point of view, there's no loss even if they have difficulties later. And Prabhupada also speaks of ante narayana smriti, that to remember Krishna at the time of death, that's the ultimate success. Like, if you want to know what is success, the ultimate success is that you remember the Lord at the end of life. And Prabhupada quotes this Bengali proverb, Bhajan kara, pujan kara, martye janle haya, that your devotional service will be tested at the time of death. That's we speak of exam and tests, but the final test will be at the time of death, and then you can see whether you're successful or not. So that would be the ultimate success.
Did you know Madhudvisha, Prabhupada's Madhudvisha, the big Kirtaniya? At least read of him. Any one of you? You have. Yeah, Prabhupada gave him sannyas. He wasn't able to maintain sannyas. He had ups and downs, but left this world in full Krishna consciousness and served the mission. Every time he would see me, he would ask me, "So how's your mission?" Like that, and this is being broadcasted. Just the way he lived and the way he left this world, his sons who I felt were never fully committed to Krishna consciousness, were very inspired the way he lived, and especially the way he left this world, that they took up very seriously Krishna consciousness after his death. You sort of touched on this. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that?
Maybe just one.
Yeah,
I thought it was interesting. Saint Francis von Assisi gave a definition of success, which I found was quite inspiring. Maybe we can share this. Because he was asked, what is success in your opinion? And he said the following, that true joy or success does not lie in the fact that all the bishops, the King of France and England join us, or that we convert all unbelievers. Of course, we could say the same, like success doesn't mean that King Charles become a devotee and we convert
then we're
everyone.
good.
Then we're good. But so after raising the question, Francis established what real success, real joy means by describing the following scenario. I have come from a long journey in the winter, frozen, exhausted, and with bleeding tibia, like a shinbone, bleeding like I'm injured, it's cold, icy, shirt. But only after a long knocking at the door of the monastery comes a brother and opens up just to send me away and tell me that I'm not wanted. I say to you, if I do not lose my patience and I do not become aggressive, that is true joy, true virtue, and the salvation of the soul. So basically the point, what is true success? If we, in the midst of greatest difficulties, if we can remain peaceful, then that's true success. And I think that's very relevant for book distributor. Like if you're on the streets, and then so how do you measure your success? Is it just how many books you distribute, or is it also how you can maintain your consciousness? Like myself, I'm not a great book distributor. I was not so much introduced in the service in my devotional history because I was temple devotee, cook, puchari, temple president. But I did also some book distribution, of course, here and there. And I find it a very fascinating service because you're really tested on the street and nobody cares whether you're the temple president or what, like you're just someone. And that's very healthy, I think very good. But then for me, I told myself, if I'm going on the street, then that's my first success. The fact that I'm going out, that's my first success. And then if I can stay there on the street for a couple of hours and remain in a happy mood, like equiposed and peaceful, then that's my second success. And if I by chance also distribute some books, then that's my third success. So in this way, I try to,
be successful.
Be successful, yeah. Because I know I'm not be successful with many books, so at least I can try to be successful in the proper consciousness.
Yeah, I have a devotee friend, and I quoted it many times, even though I completely disagree with this statement. But he said, look, I was a book distributor and you were a book distributor, and we had this amazing opportunity to serve in this fashion. And then, by the way, this happened in some other times when anyhow, some people may not relate to it nowadays, but he said, and what did I get from it? I got married. So this is where I don't agree with him. Like, I don't think that's a step down. But in his humility, he said that, and he said that why? Because while distributing books, I was gathering glory, like selfish glory, feeding the ego. That's another point where I disagree with him, because I know him. He's not like that. But it's a very well made point. What is the success? That actually feeds into this other last question that I have on this topic. Any examples of people being successful while others who thought themselves successful were actually not? Did you get that?
No.
No, okay. Any examples of people being successful while others who thought themselves successful were actually not?
Maybe you can.
Maybe I'll.
You can answer.
What did I think about? Yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of examples of this. I mean, I joined this movement in the early '90s, and there was a frenzy times of book distribution, and somewhere or other we had this concept of Übermensch. Not quite like the Nietzsche's Übermensch, but you know.
Übermensch.
How do you say
Übermensch.
that?
Übermensch.
Uber.
Der Übermensch.
Oh, forget it. Next year. I'll practice for 1 year. We call them Maharatis and like this, that, the other thing, but very often these devotees would behave in horrible ways. I mean, I remember Vyasa Puja of Harikesh, and I was a disciple of Harikesh, and you know, devotees were coming in and offering obeisances, and to speed up the process, another devotee would grab him, and I guess they offer like you grab a devotee and then you push him, and the next, like devotee offers obeisances, and then this other devotee grabs you like a sack of potatoes and tosses you. It's like, what the hell? I mean, are you a devotee? I mean, what are you cultivating? You know, and we had this concept that these kind of uber powerful people, and we all behave like that. I mean, I'm very sorry, but I was really nasty towards a lot of people, and I thought that was the success. You know, we were very militant. I would say, though, that after that we swung to the other extreme where we became way too mellow, but anyhow, some other time about that. But I thought, you know, looking at it now from this perspective, I mean, what were we cultivating? And many of those devotees, after short bursts of few years of great fame and glory, were nowhere to be found. I mean, Harikesh left the movement, and with him all these people, and I was also a disciple, and I was wondering, what are you people doing? I mean, that's his choice. Why did you come here? Because someone else made a choice, or you made a choice? I mean, why did you come here? What were you seeking? So it seemed like a success. But what's interesting, those quiet, determined, and respectful devotees, you know, real Übermensch, like really powerful people. But their power was in two things. They performed devotional service, and they did it for right reasons with right attitude. You know, they made a distance. Real heroes, I'd say. So over here you had something which looked like a success, and over there you had these devotees to whom these powerful individuals looked down upon, even engaged them in sometimes personal service. But with time, I guess tends to show, you know, who was actually successful. So what is success, and who is actually successful? Dhruva was success. I'm going to sit on that damn throne until he was enlightened.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you so much. I think we covered that topic very nicely, success. So maybe I ask a question to you?
All right.
All right, so Ruchi...
By the way, I don't know if you ever interviewed anyone, but it's way more difficult than you think.
Can be challenging.
Yeah.
Also depending on the person you interview. So Ruchi...
whether he has a gun on him.
So Ruchi was very self-centered, as we can see from this shloka also. I mean, she says, you know, like, yeah, you better die and then take rebirth through my womb. There's water. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you better die and take rebirth through my womb after worshipping the Lord, and then you can maybe climb the throne. So she was very, very self-centered, like as if she is the center of the universe, and like she's so important that only her sons can climb the throne. So that's an example of excessive self-importance. Like she really felt like, these are individuals who are self-centered. They have like an inflated sense of their own importance, and they're very much, they may believe that their concerns and priorities should always be, first, and like that. So, and it's also described that she was envy, like in the
envious.
Yeah, envious. She was envious. Yeah, she had envy. She was envious of Dhruva Maharaj, and that's why she, because she was afraid that actually Dhruva was supposed to become the king, but she wanted her own son to be the next king, so she was envious of him. And we know that Bhagavatam clearly states in the very beginning, Dharma brochita kaitava param nirmatsaranam satam. Nirmatsaram matsaram means envy. And the Bhagavatam is meant for those who are free from envy. And probably interesting translates the word nirmatsaranam as of the 100% pure in heart. Like someone who is completely pure in heart, he is someone who can receive Bhagavatam. So to be non-envious, to be free from envy, is a very, very important quality for a devotee, and we are meant to cultivate that non-envious. So maybe we could talk a little bit about envy. So how do you define envy, and how do you distinguish it from other emotions like jealousy or admiration? Maybe
that's the one I saw.
That's the first one, huh?
and I'm glad I did, because I didn't know the difference.
So maybe you can start with that one. Just sure. What do you understand of envy
what's interesting? Communication. I mean, I just looked it up in a dictionary, so
helpful sometimes.
Yeah, it's interesting. You asked there, is there a difference between envy and jealousy? Because most people think it's one and the same thing,
but it's not. Yeah.
But it's not. And I learned something new today. Yeah, I never thought about it. But there's difference between envy and jealousy. Does anyone know the difference? Oh, you know, okay. You want to say it? Yeah, please.
If you are envious of someone who's better than you, but that is all right if you want to be the same as expert as that person. But if you're envious, you don't want that person to be successful. You're envious. So someone who's envious, someone who's jealous, who likes to be like that person. But someone who's envious, he doesn't want that person to be successful, and he wants to become better than him.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Did you have something different?
No. Just, I'm wondering whether it is different. That's what I'm thinking now that you have said that. Because, I mean, I just read it, so... so it didn't really sink all that deep in my mind, because I never thought about it so thoroughly. But so envious person is a person who suffers. So the point is suffering. that person suffers because someone else has something, possessions or attributes. That's envy. And the jealousy is when you don't want the other person to have what you have. In other words, you're maintaining a certain position. It's a slight difference. Like over here, you want something, attributes or possessions of someone else, and you're suffering because that person has them and you don't. But if you're jealous, then you're in a position where you are afraid that someone may take away from you what you have. Like a position, for example. And in all honesty...
In relationships often also.
Yeah. And these typically come along. That's why they're very often identified as one, equalized. But they're actually... Apparently there's a slight difference. Now, we're talking just the dictionary here, things. Envy and jealousy, and of course, as I was reading this again, I remember the days when I was a book distributor. For God's sake, I think you even asked for an example, which is very audacious of you. How do you dare?
In public.
In public. I mean, I hope you can understand. I mean, at least this is a picture that I have in my head. Like, what's a stark difference, between Krishna consciousness or bhakti? Bhakti we often translate as devotional service, but in some ways you could say it's love. Even though when you say love, what the hell you're thinking about, God knows, and so. Envy is it's antithetical to bhakti, to Krishna consciousness. That's why we talk about it, we think about it, we try to recognize that it's we're trying to be spiritually disciplined. That's what it means to be spiritually disciplined, to watch for these things and to refuse to act on them. Which is quite a challenge, because first you have to recognize them. And what are you recognizing it with? You're recognizing it with the very same consciousness which is infected by the disease. And so, in other words, if the disease is acute enough, you're incapable of even recognizing it.
That was the other question. How do you recognize envy?
How do you recognize
how do I recognize that I'm envious?
Yeah. I mean, you asked for an example, and at first, when I read that, I have to say my ego was working. No, I cannot think of any example. What a lie! For God's sake. But for the sake of not thoroughly embarrassing myself here, I'll give examples from far past.
Very good.
That's not me, that's me in the past. Does anyone of you remember Rati, the famous musician Rati? I mean, there's so many of his. Back then, there were no even CDs yet in production, but there were tapes of. I think he was from South America somewhere. It sounded like an Indian. No, not Havi. Havi is a Prabhupada disciple, if I remember. Yeah. No, Rati. I think his name was. I might be wrong, maybe. Oh, you remember Rati? Yeah. I think that was his name. Sang very beautifully. I mean, I was once walking down a street selling books, and I heard someone singing Hare Krishna, and it was him, just himself, harmonium, and a donation box. People putting money in, and there was a lot of people around him. Yeah. Anyhow, we had a lot of festivals, and we're always, because we had a lot of marathons. There was a Christmas marathon, there was a Guru marathon, there was summer marathon. There was a lot of marathons. Nityananda marathon, Nrsimha Chatur. There were a lot of marathons, and then at the end of each we would always celebrate this. And he was there, and I was thinking, who is he? Like, he's not even from this country, you know. And he was getting so much attention, you know. And anyhow, we were all sitting in this super crowded hall. There's a lot of devotees there, maybe a few hundred devotees. And he got up to go onto the stage to do something, whatever it was. And I sat in his seat. And then when he came back, you know, I was just looking at him. It was really horrible. And he looked at me, and he didn't want to pick up a fight. I mean, I usurped his seat. I mean, this is envy and jealousy. Because, you know, I wanted to make a statement that, you know, I'm the big guy here, you know. And I can take your seat if I want to. I mean, who would think a devotee could do something like that? And you're probably right, a devotee couldn't do something like that. And his reaction was very, I mean, for years I suffered afterwards. And that's another thing, that I truly suffered through the whole experience. I mean, I suffered because he was taking the spot, he was taking the, all of the attention, at least in my mind, all of the attention. I suffered because of it. And then I suffered afterwards because I have done this stupid thing, you know. I mean, really horrible thing. And for years I was hoping that I would meet him somewhere and apologize and tell him, I'm not that person anymore. I never met him. So this was like 30 years ago. Maybe even more, I'd have to do the math. And I have another example. This one's really twisted. Digging a big grave here. Well, there was this one Mataji who was doing a lot of books, and it really bothered me. I mean, you know, I was always a quiet person, you know, so you couldn't tell on the surface that that all this was going on, but it bothered me. I don't want to say it bothered me a whole lot, but it did bother me, you know. And it bothered me that it bothered me. You follow? Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, what's wrong with you? Can't you just like be a normal devotee? So what? She's doing more books than you. You know, you should be happy, you know. But I couldn't. And it wasn't because of a healthy devotee competition where you want to glorify Guru, Krishna, and other Vaishnava or whatnot, but it was just, you know, she was getting the attention that I wasn't, you know, and I wanted to get that attention, and I was really trying to do my best to outdo that Mataji, but she was really good. I mean, she was really, really good. And then years later, we found out she was cheating. She would steal money from the temple and report it as sold books, and then she would give books for free and report them as this. She would. In other words, she was a crooked individual like myself. Like we were a band of crooks. And somehow or other, this movement is still here. And we're, so, Hare Krishna.
So maybe we can, thank you for being so honest and sharing your experiences. Maybe we could look into the solution. I mean, what helps us to recognize, or maybe directly, how can we overcome envy? What can we do to overcome?
Yeah. Well, to me, that's pretty obvious in the sense that when you have a vacuum, you cannot have a vacuum. You know what vacuum is, empty space. As soon as you have a vacuum, something gets sucked in it, you know. And if it's not the right thing, it's the wrong thing. And you see this with, you know, for a while, I had all kinds of crazy services. And one service that I had was to write. Do you know what it means to write? Make right, like get it straight and not crooked. So my service was to write to communities that went crooked. I mean, you have communities of devotees that have descended into tamas. It's just bad, and then you're supposed to go there and get it. It takes years. You know, you bring a bunch of people with you, and you try to write the thing, and so once I did something like that, and then I, you know, it was time for me to leave, go do something else, and we put in place a program, an arrangement that would prevent this thing from happening again, and engage the best devotees of the community in the best possible ways. You know, to in other words, to fill up that vacuum with the good thing. You know, and what happened was that it went very well for a few years, and then after a while, that body that we created sort of fell asleep. And then who rose up to take up the spot? I mean, this may sound horrible, but the worst of devotees. I mean, there are devotees that chant Hare Krishna, but their aspirations are, I mean, who's a pure devotee, for God's sake? But some people are really not pure devotees. So those kind of devotees, like a few of them, just like, you know, little by little, it's not that they planned, you know, but they, you see, people are so covered over, they don't even know they're covered over. And they're just acting on these low urges, desire for prominence. I heard my Guru Maharaj say that typically the best leaders are those who don't want to be leaders. I'm just joking. That's right. Thank you for your great service for a great many years. Yeah, and it seems that the devotee who took over is also a really nice one, and I look forward to be to try to be of help. So vacuum. And the envy is there because of the vacuum. Yeah.
So if someone actually is fulfilled, satisfied,
correct. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purna. It's a very interesting verse, Isha Upanishad, right? Purna means complete. I mean, it describes God, but it also describes the soul. An incomplete soul, that doesn't exist. That's an illusion. But that's the illusion that the soul finds itself in. And once you're so-called incomplete, that incompleteness is being replaced by different types of diseases, such as envy and jealousy and so on. So, but the thing is that it's not a vacuum, because envy is in there. In this case, right? There's a lot more. Envy is there, so it's not a vacuum. So how do you pour the right thing in? You know, that's, how does that verse go? Patram pushpam palam toyam ashnami prayata atma. Interesting, Srila Prabhupada translates this term prayata atma as a devotee. Prayata atma means someone who's controlled, a disciplined person. Disciplined by guru, by sadhu, by shastra, by culture, by self-discipline, where you control your senses. So much of Krishna consciousness, much of spiritual progress lies in discipline, that we're disciplined by, and that we're by external sources, and that we're disciplined by our own very selves. Self-discipline, that's a devotee. So we're trying to be a devotee as a matter of self-discipline, or as a matter of discipline, which means that that's why we study envy. Why should we study envy? But in order to recognize the damn thing. And so when you see the first inkling of it coming up, you say, no, go down, stay down. And then we try to fill that space with Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think it's a very important point. Like, I think Yudhishthira Maharaj defines envy as like a sorrow of the heart. You feel something is missing, but if we feel complete, satisfied, then there is no need for envy. Okay, great. I mean, I'm looking at the time. So far we covered 2 topics, success and envy. We have 4 more topics, but the time is... We have determination, compassion, austerity, material desires. These are some other topics.
Yeah.
So what should we do?
What shall we do?
I mean, it would be your turn to ask, but I really like to hear from you about compassion. Anyway, let's see. Do you have, I make it short.
Do I have any examples?
Okay, you can.
Or maybe we should end here. I mean, it is an hour went by.
You can also just go and take questions.
Yeah, I guess we could do that. I mean,
Yeah.
anyways, I'm supposed to have Bhagavatam classes every day. So we'll open up for questions and comments, and Prabhuji had
Yes, I just wondered what Prabhupada said, what success is. Or envy.
What Prabhupada said, what?
What Prabhupada said, what is the definition of
Of success? I don't know. I don't have it
We
handy.
quoted some. Antenarayana Smriti. Prabhupada that...
I didn't look it up, but if I would have talked about it, I would have looked it up.
Yeah, and I mentioned that. I mean, there's one purport Prabhupada speaks about what is success, and he quotes this Antenarayana Smriti. Of course, I'm sure Prabhupada spoke many times about success in different ways, but one way would be that the greatest success is to remember Krishna at the time of death.
Do you want to say something?
No,
Or
I just
curious.
because on the Pharmapedia you can just look up
Right.
success and then you see all the quotes and you might see a good quote.
Okay. Anything else? Neela, Madhava, and then Prabhuji over here.
It was interesting to hear about envy and jealousy. Still, what I've learned from Srila Prabhupada, if I'm not wrong, please correct me. You can elaborate also on it, is that Srila Prabhupada mentioned that the envy is even in the spiritual world. He even mentioned the gopis, different groups. And then he mentioned that the envy in the spiritual world is devoid of malice. If I'm pronouncing properly.
Yeah, that's the term, malice.
So maybe if you can elaborate a little bit.
We actually have that. It's in the questions, but we didn't get to it. So
I see.
yeah, because envy without malice is a great thing.
So this is what I wanted to hear a little more about it, to encourage my envious mentality. There is a chance even for me, if I get rid of that malice.
How do you say malice in Czech?
Zlomyslnost.
Oh yes.
How do you say in German?
Yeah, in German.
Bösartigkeit. Bösartigkeit.
Yeah.
That when envy leads towards harming someone else. Because you really can't tolerate it, so you want to pull the person down.
Yeah, there's evil tone to it.
Yeah.
That's malice. But without malice, if envy is a desire to have what someone else has, wow, why not? I mean, that's a point of every teacher. That's the ultimate pleasure of every teacher, that the student becomes the teacher. That the student has what the teacher. That's what the guru, what the spiritual master wants. So that's envy without malice. But if malice is there, then it's a very different thing.
Maybe something to add that Nardam Das Thakur in Prema Bhakti Chandrika gives some explanation of the 6 enemies and how to engage the 6 enemies in devotional service, like lust. How to engage lust because it's passion. So you engage in devotional service. You do a lot of service. So this way you can kind of engage your passion, or What else is there? I mean, anger is there. The famous Prabhupada speaks about this anger. You become angry on those who offend the Vaishnavas or Krishna. And like greed, you should become greedy to, I think, hear Krishna Katha, you know. But he doesn't speak about Matsarya. So it's not mentioned there as an quality you can engage. Which is interesting that he doesn't speak about Matsarya, like something like you really have to give it up. But yeah, I agree with the point you made that if it's free from malice, then it can be.
And also Prabhupada used the term envy not in the English sense of the term very often. Envy, envious. Yeah. But anyhow, now I'm opening another front. Are you satisfied with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Krishna, you mentioned several things which are very interesting, and I would maybe hear a little bit more about success for a devotee to become independently thoughtful and self-disciplined. How to achieve that, and how does it work when it's self? It's from the self. It's not from the values we get. It's just when does it come and how does it come?
How to develop this independent, thoughtful nature?
And how it works.
How it works. I will just say something and then I will let you explain. For something we have a Swami in the double class. It's practical. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada said that he wants to have independent, thoughtful followers, and I think the main point there is that it's not just about repeating things and just believing things, but it's about really questioning and really understanding it, and also have critical question and asking, challenging things and trying to understand things very deeply. And sometimes, even in our society, that's not so much appreciated. If you question something, sometimes, why you're questioning? Prabhupada said like this, you know, and you just have to follow. This is what we do. So, and that's a problem, because we should question. You know, doubt is actually a function of the intelligence. Of course, there can be blind doubt, that you just doubt in everything, but it can be a sign of intelligence if you doubt things, if you question things. And that's healthy, because if someone seeks the truth, he will, you know, ask such questions. Or if you just want to be a follower and be part of the system, then maybe you just blindly follow. But I'm sure Maharaj has much more to say about this topic. This was just an introduction.
Sorry, my mind's still thinking about the envy, like, but without malice. I mean, I remember first time I met one of the first times I met devotees, and it was. I'll come back to this in a sec. Sorry, it was a group of 3 brahmacharis. They were traveling. They were on book distribution marathon, and. We went there, myself and a few friends, and we gave some fruits and vegetables and like this, some gifts to them. And then one of the brahmacharis speaking really loud, and then the other brahmachari, as back then we would say, he smashed him. He corrected him, but very harshly, pointing out that he likes to hear himself. That's why he speaks so loud. And I was really impressed. The smashed brahmachari, the corrected one, just took it, like, just accepted it. And I was like, wow, I never seen something like that. And I was saying, I want to be like that. So there might be an example of envy without malice. Or when I met Padaman Uttama Prabhu, I mean, that person was so meek and humble. Like, there's this Mataji who was senior to us all, and she was a little bit bossy. And and she was telling, your book bag is dirty, your pants are dirty, blah, blah, blah. And he just like stood there, you know, as he was being heavied out, and then he said, you know, but don't look at my heart. It's like way worse, you know. That was his point. And I was like, wow, I want to be like that. He's my idol. But no, yeah. Yeah. If it's without malice, it's a fantastic thing, of course. Yeah. 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 We put it on a T-shirt. Is it on that topic or?
Maybe we should.
Yes. But okay. But that's the last one, and then we'll have to.
If you meet someone who's more qualified than yourself, then instead of envy, you know, you should try to learn from him. And if you meet someone who's less qualified, instead of putting him down or making ridicule of him, you feel compassion for him. And if you meet someone who's equal, befriend him.
Thank you. So in regards to self-discipline, I mean, the concept of self-discipline may come from the self, but it typically comes from external source, such as Guru or Shastra. Or, I mean, I read Prabhupada's book. I read nearly all of Prabhupada's books before I met a devotee, for example, and through those books communicated to me, among other things, self-discipline, for example. And more and more I was thinking that's valuable, that's a thing I want to do, that's a thing I should want to do, like that for a specific goal. And so, I mean, you raised an interesting question. I mean, that it comes completely from yourself. I mean, there's an expression, no man's an island. And so many things in us take place so automatically, and that we identify them as our own, but they're not. They're adopted from the external world. That's why it is almost impossible. I mean, Srila Prabhupada really displayed a great deal of concern. What will happen to the organization after he is gone? Because without the organization, you cannot push yourself enough. That's why you need a guru. I mean, interesting thing. I have quite a few friends who are athletes, and some of them are world-class athletes, and some of them spend a lot of money. What do you call these trainers?
Coach?
No. They have specific coaches, trainers that build their stamina. They are personal trainers, but there's a name for these kind of coaches that just build your stamina, physical stamina, you know. And it's interesting that you pay someone to force you to run around. So it's something like that in Krishna consciousness. I don't think it ever comes solely from you. You know, that self-discipline, it comes from the outside source, such as the society that punishes you and rewards you without you even noticing it, and therefore you like and dislike things. I mean, enter the room of a teenager whose parents are devotees, and see what kind of posters it has on the wall, and you'll see what system of punishment and rewards that person belongs to. Those posters will tell you a lot. I mean, we don't even see that for the most part. And so, without this support system, our self-discipline is typically insufficient. But yes, it comes from the Shastra, it comes from the Guru, it comes from the Sadhu. In Krishna consciousness comes from that system. And then, of course, we ultimately identify that as something that we want to do, as that is the good means to the good goal. And to the extent we identify it as such, that drive comes from our own very selves. And that's also very interesting, because you see, if you push a person more than the person has identified with it, you start to break the person. And you see such devotees, especially first when they come in contact with Krishna consciousness, where the base is still quite thin. I mean, I don't know how many years, but I don't know, I trained hundreds of young men, like in the hundreds, I don't know how many hundreds. And it was always a super stressful time, because if you don't push them enough, they don't make it. They don't have the experience they should have in order to have that aha moment, because unless you have had the experience, you don't know what the hell it is. And then if you push too hard, you break the person. And so it was always a nerve-wracking thing, and like that. It's an interesting thing. One thing was, well, I'll end here. Srila Prabhupada would push devotees to do a lot of things, take up responsibilities, and then when they did it wrong, he would chastise them. In an ordinary sense, you could say, like, what, you told me to do it. But that is the process. That's what it takes. That kind of discipline. I mean, I know there are devotees. Every time you say this, they say, "What about mercy?" Yeah, mercy. Everything's there, but mercy is not on you. It's not on your end. It comes from somewhere else. So focus on that. What you can do, and one of the great things you can do is that's greatly in your hands is self-discipline. Identifying discipline as the important element. Is that okay?
What disciplines me, in my experience, is inspiration and taste. Because then it's from the self, isn't it? So, like how to reach the taste and inspiration.
Yeah, that also comes to the point of success. What do you identify as success?
This inspiration is also coming from an external source, isn't it?
Yes and not. Like, it comes also from our own very nature as the soul. Like the thing with envy, I mean, I noticed that as long as you're maliciously envious, you actually suffer. It's all pain, all throughout. And then you have a bound of, let's say you have had the experience of humble service, but where you have actually humbly eaten a pie, or humbly eaten a humble pie. You felt yourself more like a soul, and then that experience fuels your fires further. It comes from the very nature of the soul, like that. Yeah, it comes a little bit from the outside, a little bit from the inside. As a matter of fact, that's what it says in the Bhagavatam. That mercy comes from within and from without. Should we end here? It's 9:17. We went over time, yeah. Okay. I'll just take. Just before I came here, I made a really bad twist and I hurt my back, and that's the reason why I wasn't participating in the full morning program. Please don't follow my example. Just wanted to get it out of the way. All right, thank you. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Ananda Tirtha Maharaj ki jai. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. So thank you very much, Maharaj and Krishna Prabhu, for your nice, it was an interesting new format to have more discussion instead of two separate sections, sometimes not related to each other, so thank you very much. And so we will prepare now for breakfast. So if you empty the temple room as soon as